I thought this was going to be a dumpster fire, trash, slop. I thought it was going to be something that I was going to meme on upon me making a video of it today. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, upon reading the first chapter, I actually like it more than I thought I would. It's actually really good. And in fact, I will say that, Gege Akutami, the author of JJK, legitimately is cooking. And I think that from this first chapter alone and what I'm seeing set up within the story so far, it is actually correcting a lot of problems or a lot of mysteries, like answering a lot of mysteries that, the original series left open. And I think that in general, those that finished the JJK manga, like last year, if you are a fan and you want more content, obviously you should read this. But if you're someone that was left somewhat unsatisfied, someone that wishes there was more answered, that I do think that this series might be for you. Because I want to be honest with you, the presentation of it at first glance, when I read the leaks, when I saw what people were saying about it, I kind of laughed it off and I was like, this is going to be ridiculous. Because to give a brief summary, which just does not do it any wonders whatsoever, it really makes the series seem bad. It's basically where aliens are now coming to the planet Earth. They apparently are also Jujutsu sorcerers too, like they can use sorcery, and pretty much they're trying to investigate what's going on, if they can coexist with humanity and Earth, Jujutsu sorcerers. That's more or less the overarching plot that's being set up, and the story, let's just be completely blunt, feels like a complete cash grab, or it feels like it's not something that's going to really do any justice to the original series. But as I said already, that was my initial thoughts before going in to reading the first chapter and looking at the way the leaks were presented. But now that I got my hands on the chapter, I got to read the chapter for myself, got to see kind of the flow of the story to how the artwork is in general and stuff, I'm like, this isn't that bad. It actually does a pretty good job, and I think that it really goes to show one of the reasons why so many people were upset with the ending of JJK, because Gege Akutami, he is a good writer. He is actually a good writer, and I know a lot of people like to meme on him and then also trash talk the ending of the original manga. But the reason why people were so upset, or, upset because of the ending, was because he has proven that he's a good author. He's proven that he can write good characters. He's proven he can do good techniques and fighting and everything. He's really good at writing a good battle manga. And that's why so many people, myself included, were kind of disappointed a little bit with the ending. And looking at the conclusion here, you can see that the writing is peak Gege Akutami. Like, he is really trying to expand upon the world, express what the world is doing now 68 years after the fall of Sukuna. It's actually really engaging. I really like the story of what I've read of it so far. Now, I guess with that being said, we should get into what it actually is, because obviously I've been praising it, I've been trying to hype it up, but I guess let's actually talk about what's going on within the story. First of all, one of the biggest mistakes that I think any part 2/sequel series can do that tries to continue on to the next generation is keep characters around that is from the previous generation. If you're wondering what I mean by that, I'm talking about, for instance, like characters like Megumi, Yuji, Nobara, characters like that, still being present in front and center within the story. And the reason why I think that is a mistake or a bad thing within a continuation is because typically, when you have a continuation, I'm going to use Boruto as a very good example. Obviously, the story is no longer focused, let's say, on Naruto. Naruto is present, but it's no longer his story. It's focused on Boruto. And the problem here is that a lot of these characters that have been around for a while, basically since the OG, they are either power crept to such a degree to where, like, their abilities, their accomplishments of what they did throughout their story feels like it was, thrown to the side to allow the new characters to just be much stronger than them, or the old characters, let's say like Naruto for instance, just example, let's say they fight a very strong opponent and then they get, absolutely dumpstered. They get thrown in the dumpster and destroyed to build up the threat of the enemy, just to bring in, let's say, one of the new characters within the story to be able to fight the enemy and defeat them. So that is an issue. That's an inherent issue with characters from the original being brought into a sequel, because typically what's eventually going to happen is that the original characters are going to be power crept or dumpstered on. But the fact that the story just straight up opens up with, like, literally the beginning chapters, like, I'll show it. The beginning chapters, it literally opens up that Maki and, Yuta, they're gone. Like, they legitimately, there's a funeral and everything. They're straight up gone. And it's heavily implied, it's not directly stated, but it's heavily implied that pretty much the original cast like Megami, Nobara, and Yuji are deceased as well. Once again, it's not straight up stated, but it's heavily implied, especially with the dialogue around the middle, which I opened up, this video with. But, when they're talking about old school Jujutsu Sorcerers, the guy that's, like, the enemy of this chapter, he talks about how, like, there's really no legends still walking around to this day. People that were a part of the Culling Games over 68 years ago are not really around anymore. There isn't any Jujutsu Sorcerer that can really rival them anymore. And so, it is heavily implied that the OG fighting team is just non-existent. Or if they're still around, they're so old and feeble that they can't do much anymore. That's at least the impression that the chapter gives off. And to be fair, like, if we just look at Yuji, for instance, he would be, like, in his 80s. Like, he would be, like, 80-something years old. And don't get me wrong, Yuji's obviously powerful. I mean, he brought down Sukuna, regardless of how you feel about that. He brought down Sukuna. He's incredibly strong. I mean, he technically absorbed his brothers, like, and became kind of like a death painting. So, he is definitely an exceptional and superhuman entity, but age does eventually catch up to you. Age will eventually get you, and just eventually you won't be as strong as you once were. In this case, I feel like someone like Yuji eventually would probably have something like that happen, especially in a time period where maybe, things are a little bit more peaceful, it's not as crazy as it once was. He's probably just tried to live his life and just be happy, more or less. That's what I assume is more or less going on. But I do like how it instantly sets up that the old cast is just not really around anymore. Either they're too old or they're dead and deceased at this point. And I think that is a perfect way to handle a sequel in a proper fashion, because there's just so many series that try to do that and keep the old legacy characters, and they don't fit well, properly, so to speak, or they get undermined considerably throughout the story's progression. So, with that being said, I guess let's talk about the actual story besides that. So, the alien invasion, so to speak, that the series is setting up is that apparently aliens have discovered Earth. Apparently they realize that Japan is the only nation that has Jujutsu sorcery and stuff like that, which was already established at the end of the original JJK manga. And obviously what's being told here is that either A, there's two outcomes. Jujutsu sorcery within Japan comes from aliens, aka the aliens introduced here, or Japan just is built different, and they have always had Jujutsu sorcery, and then somehow there's another species that evolved that's basically very similar. One of the two. However, I am more inclined to believe that the reason why Jujutsu sorcery even exists is because of the aliens. And the reason why is because of Sukuna. Sukuna obviously is the poster child, the main villain and antagonist of the story of JJK. I mean, the entire ending was just such a crazy gauntlet to bring this man down, spanning so many chapters, so much memes, so much funny content, and obviously the only reason why Sukuna was basically defeated was because he needed to be defeated. He had to lose. If it wasn't for that, he probably would have won in the end, which honestly would have been a crazy conclusion, but that doesn't matter anymore, because it's long done, it's said and done, it's over. No reason crying over spilled milk, so to speak. However, what I want to talk about when it comes to Sukuna is his design. If you take a look at Sukuna's design, instantly you will notice the similarities to him and the alien species. I don't think I need to really point it out, but obviously the symbols on the aliens are very similar to Sukuna. For instance, if you take a look at, like, for instance, when he's in Yuji's body, you see the symbols on Yuji's body are pretty much similar to what you see on the cheeks of the alien. Now, obviously, this just could be maybe chalked up to a coincidence, but you gotta remember that this is a new artist. This is a completely new artist. This isn't Gege Akutami doing the art, so it is 100% intentional. It is 100% intentional to have a similar design. Now, it could be because maybe Sukuna, maybe it's just a off-chance reference to it or something, I have no idea, but it is leading me to believe that Sukuna was an alien or a descendant of one. Now, before anyone thinks that's ruining his character, I will get into that in a second. But I also want to point out that Sukuna is one of the very few, like, technically people we see with multiple eyes like this. And it's established literally in the first chapter that this guy behind this little, like, patch, like this, like, patch on his forehead, it's a straight up eye. Like, I'll even show it here. Like, let me pull up the section of the chapter. It's like right towards the end. You see him open his eye, And that's what it looks like. You can literally see the design of it. And if you take a look at, like, for instance, Sukuna's design here, it has a very similar design. Yeah, I think it's case closed on this situation. But, so what does this mean for Sukuna, so to speak? Well, if I had to take an educated guess, this would explain why he's so absurdly powerful. I mean, it is 100% established that Sukuna is ridiculous. He was ridiculous to bring down. He was in a league of his own, even in the end. The fact that it took basically the entire cast to bring him down, and there was just so many casualties to bring this guy down, shows just how insane he was. And now it makes sense. If he is technically an alien, or an ascendant of one to some degree, it all fits in line. Which also establishes that the aliens within the story that are being introduced could theoretically maybe be on the same level, or maybe Sukuna really was just that much of an anomaly. We'll have to find out. The point is Sukuna is clearly going to be very relevant, I think, as the story is trying to establish with context clues. Another thing, by the way, speaking on the topic of Sukuna, is that this guy here, which is technically, as I've already pointed out, similar design, he has a twin brother at that. And who else has a twin brother that we know of that's similar to this guy? Sukuna. If you don't remember, it was revealed that Sukuna ate his twin in the womb. Like, he straight up was a cannibal, man. He was gumming his brother to death with no teeth, okay? The man was crazy. So, obviously, JJK has implied that reincarnation and stuff and repeating cycles is a thing within its series. I'm led to believe that if this character isn't, like, the reincarnation, so to speak, of Sukuna, it might be Sukuna's brother. Like, his original brother that was devoured, so to speak. That's what I'm led to believe. This is a theory. No evidence to really back this up. But the twin thing and all that, it feels very similar to some of the themes that we have seen throughout the story of the original. Speaking of themes of the original, we do have new characters. And the two new characters that we got are descendants of Yuta and Maki. And basically, we have more or less continuation of some of the main themes that drove some characters, like the brother figure here on the right. He is implied to be like Toji and applied to be like Maki. Like, he has heavenly restriction, or he's at the precipice of basically having, like, heavenly restriction. While the sister, she more or less seems to be someone that feels like she's not adequate or strong enough, and she's constantly competing with her brother, and she wants to be powerful. She wants to be recognized. She wants to be someone that could hold up the family name. And we have seen a lot of characters within JJK that kind of want to do that. So, the themes are very similar. There's a lot of repeating patterns. I think in general, that is more or less what the story is trying to say. Now, one last thing I do want to add on before I wrap up the video is that Gege Akutami has already mentioned that he wants this series to be about 6 months long, I believe, 3 volumes long. Now, that's, to be fair, he stated in his own words that if it gets axed, obviously it'd be shorter. But that also means that it's very likely, if this does very well, it's very popular, it'll probably get much, much more content than just, let's say, 6 months of content. I think that, honestly, this series is cooking. I think that it has the potential to be a modern age. This might be a strong thing to say, but it has the potential to be the modern age Dragon Ball. Now, before I get crucified, let me explain. If you recall, Dragon Ball started off as just, like, basically, like, you know, a simple story, no aliens or anything like that. But then Z happened, the Saiyans arrived, Raditz arrived, and then we found out about aliens, different planets, Namek, Frieza, you get the point. I feel like with the alien introduction, there is obviously some inspiration taken from those tropes, those themes, like of Dragon Ball has done, and I feel like it can do it good if it is written properly. We will just have to see. But, I will leave it at that. Tell me your thoughts. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? You know, be honest. I'm legit curious on how everybody's feeling about this series. Do you want to see more videos of me talking about this? Let me know in the comments below. But if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Helps with the algorithm. Be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.